Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the 2019 drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Mish Shedlock, editor of Mish's Global Economic Trend Analysis on maven.net/Mish Talk. Welcome back to the show, Mish.
Pleasure to be on.
You have a really interesting article about the myths surrounding global warming. Can you tell us about it and maybe provide us the link that really opens some eyes?
Well, we don't call it global warming anymore.
Okay.
You probably know. We call it climate change.
Oh.
See, we have all these fluctuations. See, this way, whenever polar bears increase, it's because of climate change. And whenever polar bears decrease, we call that climate change too. And no matter what the climate is doing, the context is it's always bad because we need to be doing something about it to stop it. That is the context here. A couple of videos came my way, and I talked about them in my post on climate change fraud or global warming fraud. I can't remember what I called it. One of them was shorter term, and a person went through and took out all of these recent climate change studies. These are from say 1920 to present time, and he posted timelines. So one way you can tell, Jim, that someone's manipulating the data or the story is when the timeline always changes. So they looked at warming from 1962 on. They looked at the number of burning incidents, wildfires. They chose a different timeline for that one. 4 different series. They picked different timelines. One of them was on the amount of ice. And of course, they always picked the timeline starting at the exact bottom of if we were going to have a problem here. If you go back and look at all of the charts that they did, you can see that on every one of them, a period around 1920 was actually much warmer than it is now. Warmer, less ice, more fires, everything up and down the line. So when I did this post and someone, says, well, okay, you're confusing recent weather with the climate. And no, I'm not, because a second video, much longer, that I linked to, actually, went back through centuries worth of this data, again, showing how, cherry-picked, the timelines were, from within a century and other anomalies. It's a real eye-opener, and I guess I would advise people to look for my blog, and let me see if I can come up with a name here, and maybe you have the title. Where is it here? I'll find it. Global Warming Fraud Exposed in Pictures is the title of my post. So I asked people who believe in this stuff to actually play both of those videos and come back and see if it changes their mind.
Well, of course, we know the Earth itself goes in cycles, and roughly we have 100,000 years of ice age and 10,000 years of warm. Aren't we lucky to be in the warm period and not under a mile of ice?
Well, one would think so. And, the curious thing here about all this global, about all the melting and whatever, and the rise of the sea level, and Florida's quickly going to be underwater, and everything else that they say, AOC would have us believe, and this was a year ago, so I think we have 11 years left, that the world will end in 12 years. So, clearly it's getting more, the talk is getting more and more alarmist Yet, one of the studies shows that the level of the ocean has been rising at the same rate for something like the past 100,000 years. So it's all a bunch of nonsense. What the leading scientists that I believe are saying is this is really about the solar cycle. It's really about the sun, and it's a lot of hubris to think that men are having a greater effect on the climate, say, than natural fundamental changes, which we really don't understand, in the sun itself. The number of solar flares, sunspot activity, and the like all coincide with warming and cooling periods, and we just came out of a period with increased solar activity, and now we're entering a period of decreased solar activity. And a lot of scientists expect that a global cooling period is now going to be upon us. If anything, I would lend more credence to that. But let's toss it all aside, Jim, and let's just step back and say, let's just assume all of these people, alarmists, are correct. What are the odds that government is going to do anything sensible about it? Al Gore wanted to throw $80 trillion at it. I wonder if we can spend $80 trillion on anything. Think of all the construction of building these cities, putting in public transportation globally. What kind of resources, would it take to mine all of this, to put all this infrastructure in place? I don't believe we can spend $80 trillion on anything without increasing, at least short term, the amount of carbon dioxide, to do it. So it's all crazy, and that's my bottom line position, that even if this is happening, which I very strongly doubt, the odds of government doing anything sensible about it is crazy. If we just look at what the industry itself is doing with electric cars and the trends there, it seems like to me that the free market is handling whatever problem we have here quite nicely.
Well, I keep wondering, how do carbon taxes control volcanic eruptions and sunspots?
Well, clearly they don't. So what we have to decide then, Jim, is that volcanic activity and sunspots have nothing to do with the problem, that instead it's all carbon dioxide. And if you think about the implications of the policies here, pick a random country in Africa, your own choice, where they have very little electricity. So what are they doing instead? Well, the global activists, don't want them to put any electric plants in. They want them to put in solar and wind and other things that are unreliable and, quite frankly, cost way more than electric. Meanwhile, these people are in these villages are burning wood for heat because they can't get electricity. Now, how much sense does this make? The answer, of course, is not.
Well, back in Roman times, it was much warmer. They're finding Roman fishing villages 70 miles from the Mediterranean today. So, how could they have taken elephants across the Alps if the Alps weren't a lot warmer back then? It's all, quite interesting here, and, we're not going to convince anybody here. But perhaps if people actually go out there and find my post on Mish Talk, global warming fraud exposed in pictures, play the video, it's either going to change your mind or not. Most likely not, because global warming, global climate change now, as it's called,
has become a religion, and anyone who disagrees with that is branded a heretic. That's what we're discussing here. We're not discussing climate. We are, in fact, discussing religion.
Is it a way of trying to redistribute wealth?
That's what some claim. If you look at some of the policies, they make no sense. Some people might claim, and these are both contradictory, that, this is an effort to prevent and keep Africa in poverty so that they don't burn, electricity and compete with the United States and China or whoever for gas and energy, whatever, to produce the electricity. I've also heard the claim that these carbon taxes are simply a way to redistribute wealth from here to over there. Those are kind of contradictory. One of them says we're going to take our wealth and spread it around, and the other one says we're going to keep them in poverty. I don't know that either of those is true. I don't know what the true agenda here is, other than the agenda has taken on a life of its own, and it has become a religion. I think that's all we can say.
We'll have more with Mike Shedlock right after this.
Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Mike Shedlock. Mish, is having the world's reserve currency a curse for the U.S.?
Depends on your point of view. Everyone, and I wrote a post about this, it's kind of interesting. It's a curse in the sense that no one wants it. And, for all this talk about China is going to replace the yuan is going to replace the dollar as the world's reserve currency, and the ECB wants more euros used in trade, blah blah blah. The fact of the matter is, no one really wants this thing, and the reason why they don't want it is they all support a mercantilist export society, and China wants more exports, Japan wants more exports. Germany wants, believe it or not, still more exports, despite the fact that exports are 47% of its GDP. The Eurozone wants more exports. Trump wants more exports. Everyone wants to export more than they import. Of course, that's mathematically impossible. But when you have the world's reserve currency, some things can be imposed upon you, and that is and one of those is that the U.S. consumers have become the consumers of last resort. Now, is this a good thing, or is this a bad thing? Perhaps it's neither. Perhaps it just is. But the fact that everyone wants to do the same thing, they all want to export, so they're all the country, negative interest rates in Japan, negative interest rates in the ECB, negative interest rates in Sweden, some of the Scandinavian countries that are not in the ECB, not in the Eurozone, are all trying to do the same thing. Nobody wants a strong currency. So, because the U.S. stock markets are doing relatively better than the rest of the world, and because we've got the most freest capital markets in the world, and because we have the world's largest bond market, these are all good things. The rest of the world can, if you hold the view of Trump, take advantage of us. Now, is this really a disadvantage of having all of these things? I think not, but that's the claim, and that is the curse of the being the reserve currency. That you know, cede control over some of these things, you know, to what other nations, you know, can do to you, simply by accumulating dollars and selling cheap goods to the United States. Trump wants to do something about it, but he can't. He can't. And that was one of the points in my post, and the reason why he can't do anything about it all goes back to 1971, when Nixon closed the gold window. He stopped redeemability of U.S. dollars for gold. The exchange rate way back then was $35 an ounce. The John Connally, Nixon's Secretary of Treasury, famously once said, the dollar is our currency, but your problem. I think that opened up some eyes, and then Nixon ended up canceling the redeemability of gold. It was supposed to be temporary. It wasn't. What happened, what soon happened after that, within a number of few years, when people realized that it was not temporary, and we weren't going to go back to exchanging gold for dollars on demand, it let central banks inflate at will, and they did. The U.S. could have all the wars it wanted without raising taxes to pay for it. Japan could build bridges to nowhere without having funds to pay for it. The Eurozone itself rose out of some of these imbalances, and so here we are. And I think a currency crisis awaits. With everyone wanting the same thing, a cheaper currency, something has to give somewhere. What the trigger is, I don't know. It could be in the ECB. It could be in Japan. It could be something in China. It could be another huge war. I don't know what the trigger to the currency crisis is. I'm just confident there is going to be one. I can't put a time frame on it, but I can tell you, to protect yourself from it, you need to have some gold.
We'll have more with Mike Shedlock right after this.
Grand Portage Resources' Herbert Gold Project in southeast Alaska highlights increased gold resource, indicated and inferred, of 860,000 ounces, in excess of 10 grams per ton gold. Expansion drilling is planned on the Herbert Gold property for the summer of 2019. Grand Portage Resources trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Mike Shedlock. Mish, you just mentioned gold before the break. $1,500 an ounce right now. What kind of price range do you think might happen, or is the sky the limit?
I don't know. I mean, I hate putting targets on these things because you end up looking silly. Look at all the silly targets on Bitcoin. $1 million, and then, every time Bitcoin starts to rally a bit, one of these $1 million calls comes out of the woodwork. I saw a call yesterday. Someone says $90,000 by the end of the year, and of course we've seen $100,000 by the end of the year predictions for each of the last 3 years that haven't happened yet. I don't think they will. I think that if Bitcoin ever became, cryptocurrencies in general ever became a threat to central banks, they would squash it. I don't know at what price that is, but I'm positive there is such a price. It could be just above the recent high. Maybe it's even double or triple where it is now. So maybe Bitcoin could get to 40,000, maybe higher. I don't know where the price is, but I do know that these $1 million targets are completely asinine. We would be creating, if it ever got to that point, there would be people worth trillions of dollars, which would be a threat to central banks for someone to be worth, that much. It won't happen. So where the point is, I don't know. What happens to gold? I don't know. Could conceivably they do the same thing to gold if it got high enough? But no one's talking about $1 million gold here. So, people are talking $10,000 an ounce gold. Yeah, I think that's possible. What time frame? Don't know. Would I necessarily hold on to my gold that long? I guess it all depended where I thought the U.S. dollar was going at the time. And that's, all we can say here, at the moment, that gold provides a fair amount of protection against central bank insanity. So that's my position without really having a target in the near term or even midterm that's worth discussing.
Could you ever see negative interest rates coming to the U.S.? I mean, they've worked out so well for Japan and Europe.
Actually, I don't, and I'm getting ready to do a post on that. I've mentioned that before. My post here is a little bit different. It's about why the ECB actually went down this negative interest rate rabbit hole. I think it's going to be a fascinating post for most people. I give them a couple of choices that it's the ECB simply doesn't know what it's doing, or choice number 2 is it's on purpose for some reason, and if so, what's the reason? And I explain the reasons. The post is coming up within the next day or two, so I would ask people to look for that. But I think the Fed can see that there's some sort of limit, and it might not even be below zero. It was an interesting study done. I can't remember who did it, but I talked about it in one of my posts. That was about the effective lower bound. And one of the things the Fed has been doing recently is not talking about zero bound or what happens when interest rates fall to zero, but they're talking about the effective lower bound. I believe the effective lower bound, and we need to define that, so let's define that. That is the point at which monetary policy is counterproductive. In other words, it does not further expansion of any kind, or the Fed's goals. So I believe that is a positive number, not zero or negative. The article just said, well, it can be either, and it described, circumstances that tend to control it. And one of the interesting facts, though, was that the article suggests that the rate rises over time, and specifically in response to QE. In other words, the more and more and more QE you do, at one point you hit a limit, in which case doing any more does not spur growth. It only harms the banks. So I firmly believe that part of the theory. I just don't think that the rate can ever get negative. But that's the discussion right now here. And it's an important one. Where is the effective lower bound what is the ECB doing and why. That's going to be the subject of a post coming up real soon.
Do you think they'll have a negotiated Brexit by the October 31st deadline?
I don't know. That's another post that I'm actually getting to write this afternoon. I certainly think it's possible. If you listen to all the talk, it says, well, the ECB says they'll never do this. Ireland says they can't agree with this, latest plan. Johnson's actually released a plan today, and essentially it's moving the border to a place that the ECB actually offered Theresa May in the beginning, and she refused it. So they're all saying the plan can't work and won't work, but there's actually a very good chance that it will work. And I think the odds right now are at least 50-50 on that. And even though others are dismissing it, the thing they're doing, though, the mistake they're making, is dismissing this on the basis of what the ECB is saying rather than on what the ECB is doing. The ECB is saying, this plan is insufficient, it won't work, blah, blah, blah. What they're doing, however, is talking with Johnson, and they want more talks. And Ireland is talking with Johnson, and Ireland wants more talks. So while they're saying that no progress is being made, talks are progress. This is a far different situation than, with Theresa May, going back, to Parliament and presenting the same deal 3 times. We have here a deal and a discussion that's a work of progress. It's just not a final state here. Now, whether or not whether or not UK Parliament will approve that, I don't know. Let's call that 50-50 too. But it's very possible that if they don't approve it, that the fallback is going to be no deal on October 31st. If Johnson can get to that point where the ECB actually says this is the final deal and means it and no more extensions, I believe the deal will pass. I think that is the path we're on. Whether or not we can get there is another question.
Mish, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Pleasure to be on the show, Jim.
My guest has been Mike Mish Shedlock, editor of Mish's Global Economic Trend Analysis on maven.net/MishTalk, and that's also where you can find his article entitled Global Warming Fraud Exposed in Pictures. If you have any questions for Mike, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.